Informative versus persuasive speaking or presenting. And that's the topic we're going to talk about today, because in almost any kind of professional role that you are in, you are going to constantly have to make choices about how you present and what your focus is. So let's get into the details on those options. Hello there and welcome back, my friends. Alex Lyon here. And if we haven't met yet, this channel is called Communication Coach, and everything we do here is for emerging leaders, especially on the topic of communication and leadership. And today we're talking about informative versus persuasive speaking, because this is, of course, something that you might have done in your public speaking course in college, but also anytime as a leader you stand and present, you have to make a choice about how you shape your message so that it best meets the needs of your listeners. And this is a typical choice you will make every day. So let's first look at informative speaking and what that involves. Now, informative speaking sounds just like the name suggests. You are informing people about something they need to know that they probably didn't know before, or something they need to know how to do that you are going to show them how to do. Those are both informative approaches to speaking. Now, a lot of times when you're in a teaching role, educational role, you're a trainer, this is really obvious. You're going to do this all the time. But as a supervisor or leader of any sort, you're constantly coaching people up. You're showing them how to do things. You're training them. You're mentoring them. And that involves conveying a lot of information, sometimes in a speaking situation. In terms of the kinds of topics you might talk about, now I'm going to talk about general topics here that you could relate to, like from a college situation. Let's say you were doing a speech in college about Thomas Edison, a person, right? That's an informative topic typically, where you inform us about his life, his inventions, and things like that. Maybe it's a presentation about a historical event like Pearl Harbor and the importance of that battle in World War II. That might be an informative presentation you could do. How electricity works, alternating current, direct current, and all the details there. It could be a how-to speech, like how to make sushi. These are very typical examples you're going to see in an academic setting, but they're also in a professional setting. Again, you're training people how to use a new computer process. You're teaching people about the history of the company. There are lots of opportunity for informative speaking. When you're doing orientation talks to get new employees up to speed, that's informative speaking. So when you're doing informative speaking, you are filling your main points in the body of your presentation with all kinds of what we call supporting materials. So you're using data, statistics, facts, examples, quotations, stories. Those are your supporting materials that convey the information that you're providing. So you're not just giving your own explanation of things, you are supporting everything you're saying with real concrete kinds of information that give people a variety of ways to absorb and understand the message that you are trying to communicate. So again, as teachers, trainers, leaders, you're doing this all the time in professional settings. Now, one of the telltale signs that a lot of people don't realize when you're doing informative speaking, that you're actually informing them and not persuading them, is the way your message is structured. So the main points, especially in the body of a presentation, you have an intro, body, conclusion. In the body, you have, let's say, 3 or so main points. When you're speaking to inform, you're usually going to decide on something like a chronological order, or sometimes called a sequence order. That's a way of approaching a topic. So there are steps, step 1, step 2, step 3. Or if it's a historical presentation, the history of a company, for example, you're going to start about the beginning, middle, and present day, or beginning, middle, and end, depending upon how what topic you're talking about. You might also, when you're informing people, decide on a spatial arrangement. Let's say you're doing a presentation about the United States. You might divide that by region, north, south, east, west. That might be one way to go. Those are all informative ways to structure a message, and that's a real telltale sign that you're listening to an informative message or presentation. Let's now turn to persuasive presentations. Persuasive speaking is really about one key thing, and that is changing people's minds or behaviors, and those things are often related. So you're not just informing them and giving them good information to consider, you're giving them information, but to change their minds, to change their point of view. you're building an argument with all the materials that you have. It's almost like you're a lawyer in a court of law and you are trying to convince the judge or the jury to your point of view. And you're doing that in a lot of ways, but you're still using statistics, facts, examples, quotations, stories, all of the supporting materials that you would normally see in an informative presentation. You still have tons of information, but you're sharing it as a way to support. You're sharing it like it's evidence because you're supporting a point of view, an argument that you're putting forth to try to convince them. And you, by the way, you can even select some of the exact same topics as you did before. Like you might still do a presentation about Thomas Edison, but instead of just informing us about his life, you might be trying to persuade us that he was the most influential inventor of all time. You might still do a presentation on Pearl Harbor, but you might talk about how it is the key battle that changed everything in World War II. That would be persuading us. So any real topic can be approached in multiple ways. Oftentimes you'll see people speaking persuasively. Really stereotypical examples are politicians and salespeople and motivational speakers. And while that is certainly true, I have found in my roles professionally, I'm almost always trying to persuade people in one way or another, whether it's really a strong sales pitch or whether I'm just trying to get them to take some action. Instead of just leaving them off and informing them, I want them to take the next step. Now, one of the telltale signs, again, for persuasive speaking is just like informative speaking, how you organize the main body points of a presentation. When you're speaking to persuade, you will most frequently structure it on some type of problem solution order, some variation of problem solution. So the first point or so is going to be about all the problems that are associated with your topic that you're talking about, and then you recommend a solution. You're moving them from A to B. You're changing their mind, changing their behavior. And so you'll see salespeople do this where they'll tell you all about the problems with the other products out there or the problem in your life, and then they will tell you about their product that will solve that problem. So if you have a bad mattress, bad night's sleep, here's the solution, our mattress. Politicians do this. Motivational speakers try to really get you in touch with the struggles in your life so that you're more likely to change. But again, professionally, you're going to see lots of opportunities to speak persuasively that don't really fit the stereotypical examples, but nevertheless, you're there to help people move from A to B. In fact, I have 2 separate videos that will help move you forward if you want to get serious about persuasive speaking. One is on Monroe's motivated sequence. That's a whole way to order your entire presentation, a map for the whole thing. And the other is called How to Organize a Persuasive Speech or Presentation. And that really goes into how to structure those main points when you want to make it a persuasive message. So I want to now talk about how they overlap, because in an academic setting, in public speaking classes, they will say, this is an informative speech and this is a persuasive speech. But really, in professional settings, you're almost always doing these at the same time. It's just depending upon what proportion they're in. How much are you persuading versus how much are you informing? So for example, if I am going to do even a straight up sales presentation, I have to bring people along with good information. I have to use, I have to train them on how to do something. I have to get them educated on a process. There's no way around those informational aspects of it. But also in a professional setting, very rarely am I purely speaking to inform. I almost always want them to take a next step. So let's take something like orientation. Let's say I'm doing an orientation or training for new employees. That sounds like straight information, but really what I want them to do is take this information and put it into practice to take the next step. So a lot of times, even in a training, you will get people to chart out their next step and their takeaways from a training session. And then I will snap into persuasive mode to get them motivated to actually try this stuff out and use it. Not just hear it and forget it, but use it, put it into practice in the future. So in real life situations, you're almost always doing a combination of both of these. You see that for almost any topic across settings when you're in a professional context. So let's talk about application for you. You want to think about what's my best approach for this particular message. Let's say you have an upcoming presentation or a speech or an important meeting. You want your message to fit that situation, whether it's persuasive or informative. So how do you make those decisions? Well, you look at your audience and you get clarity on who exactly your audience is going to be, who they are, what do they want out of this, what are your goals as a speaker or a leader, and then also what is the occasion. You want to make sure your message fits the needs of the moment. And that's the best way to drive it. Don't ahead of time try to figure out if you're going to persuade or inform. Figure out what the needs are of the situation and then customize your message to those particular needs. And that's the best way to fit your message, whether it's informative, persuasive, or a combination of both. So thanks for listening. I encourage you to watch those videos I mentioned. They're linked in the description below this one. God bless, and I will see you soon.